We're so glad that everybody's here. I think it's really ironic that we're going to talk about being zoomed out.
I know, I was thinking that too.
Zoom. So if you're the type of person that needs to like move around, wiggle around, this is a great chance to go for a walk. If you're in India, you're going to have to put like a scarf on, but you can go for a walk, stretch, move around. We'll use our chat as always. We definitely want to talk to you. And if you need to move around and you just want to listen, that's totally cool. We get it. We really get it because
we really get it now, right?
And Ann has got, what I love is that in her background, like one of her cats is like clawing at the window. We've got a cat butt over here. I should probably bring my dog on.
Absolutely.
That
is, we didn't talk about the upside of Zoom, and that is one of the upsides. You get to see people's, oh, hello, sweetie. Oh.
All right.
Hello.
We have a new
Hi, Ember.
leader today on the Zoom call. This is Ember. She was just sleeping, so she's not happy with me
She's
right
like,
now.
why did you bother me?
She's not happy with it. Okay.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about, sort of what are, because we're kind of focused on like, why is Zoom making us so tired? Maybe we should talk to Lindsay about like, what are some of the things that are kind of cool about it?
I love it.
You could do that too.
I think that's great. And there are, anytime a new technology comes out, it's very common that it gets demonized. So when the radio came out, the American Psychiatric Association published a statement saying like, this is going to invade your home. Messages will reach your kids that you can't control. We had that moment, right? People got mad. Even like when chess became a thing, when the bicycle was being used, people got upset because they're like, we don't like this. This is dangerous. People are just going to want to ride their bikes around, play chess, and not do what we've always done. But that is part of what technology does. It disrupts current life and it changes us.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of what is sort of challenging about this world that we sort of ended up in very, very quickly is because I was thinking about how really for the brain, telephone is easier. And I was thinking, well, that's really interesting. But part of it is that we grew up with it. Whatever age you are, whatever generation you are, you did grow up with from being very small. Now, maybe as we look at more the digital natives, Lindsay, some of the way they're going to grow up is more with visual as well. So there may be somewhat of a different adaptation there. But I think about, I was just saying to these guys, I'm 56 years old, and maybe some of you on the call remember laying in the hallway with the phone cord stretched as far as you could. So that you could talk to your best friend in your room with the door closed.
That's right.
Right?
That's exactly right.
We're used to connecting that way, and this has required a real shift of the brain in an intense, somewhat overwhelming and very quick way. And I think that is one of the problems. It's not that the technology is terrible and we should demonize it. It's just we got to get thrust into it with no gradual lead up. And all of a sudden it's like everything, like overnight.
That's exactly it. Well, I'm so glad that we're talking about this because do you ever find that and I've seen this with my clients in the last few weeks, they're like, I don't know why I feel this way. What's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? Oh, I feel weird. Why do I feel this way? And if we can just explain, this is why you're likely feeling this way, it actually takes some of the anxiety out of it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think I was talking to a client yesterday who was saying he had a couple of days he wanted to go to sleep at 4:30. And I was just, as you know, Lindsay, I was just writing about this in preparation for today. And part of it was like, if you feel tired, don't think that you're a weenie or you're weak or you're just kind of, not cool enough. It's really, there are some real logical research-based reasons why if you are, and part of it for him was he was spending all day on Zoom. And so people are like, why should that necessarily be more exhausting? Well, there are some reasons why it is.
I love that. Will you jump in and share? So, because we like, everybody should know this came up because Ann and I were on a totally different call about generations and we were having fun with her and her team. And then all she did, Ann does this. She like drops little breadcrumbs. She's like,
what did I do?
You said, did you know that when people are in the same room, they trigger your smell? Like, even if you don't smell them, their pheromones trigger you.
Yep.
And you said your peripheral vision is triggered in a different way when you're with humans, like in real life. And I grabbed onto that one little thing Ann said, and I was like, come back on the porch, tell everybody, tell the world.
What was really great about it, Lindsay, so if you don't know me, if you haven't hung out with me before, my thing is the brain, and I like to translate the brain into human development. And that's how Lindsay and I know each other. We're both coaches. So, I'm always kind of looking at, is there a brain explanation? Is there a neuroscience explanation? And so I am not an expert in attention, which is what this is. So there are people who research attention. So that's what we're dealing with right here. But I do know a lot of generalized things about the brain. And I was noticing for myself, Lindsay, that I would get off a few hours of Zoom and feel like I'd been hit by a truck.
Yeah.
Which is different than, and it was a different kind of exhaustion than if I'm all day in a classroom, where often I would feel somewhat energized. So really in looking at kind of so first I looked at sort of what were my initial hits around it, and there are a few, and then really what are the researchers saying about this. So one of them is, one of the things that I think might be biggest is that we process with all of our senses. And so one of the reasons why it's easier in person is we get, smell, touch, visual operates a little differently. And I want to talk about that as well as the hearing. And we can go in and out of sort of sharp focus into soft focus, and it's harder to do that on a call like this. And I love the woman, who is that there? Sally, thank you for nodding at me. It's making me feel very empowered.
My girl.
I'm just loving that,
you
Sally.
Too, yeah.
She's nodding at me. It's great. So thinking that and I think even there's even a way that we taste in terms of how the air tastes and things like that. And a lot of these things, one of the examples I give is when I was growing up, my dad smoked a pipe. Not very common anymore, but occasionally I'll get this whiff of pipe tobacco. And it sort of like brings me back to this little girl time, and just it makes me feel really like warm. So that's a conscious way that we're aware. So you might have that, when you hug your whoever it is, grandma or whatever, like there may be a smell, and if you get a whiff of Jean Naté, you're just right back to grandma, right?
Yep.
But that's more what we're kind of aware of. And then there's all sorts of stuff going on with smell that we're not aware of. That is, it's a major processing thing for us. So just like dogs, we smell fear. We can smell emotions on each other. We're not going to necessarily be aware, but our bodies are going to respond. And it's going to give us a huge amount of information that we don't have access to on the screen. So let me pause there because there's more, but...
No, I think that's great. That's so helpful because, and you've said this before, and Ann wrote an awesome blog about this that, Sam, can you get that blog? And I'll send you the link, but let's get it into the, I'll jump in my email. I want to make sure people can see it in the chat before the end. I'll get you the link. But Ann, what we're talking about, if you're just jumping on, I know we're all coming in at the end here at 4:10, which is totally fine. I know we're all doing a million things, but we're talking about this idea that being in person is wildly different than being on Zoom. And all of this, Anna said this before, but so much of who we are operates under the surface. Right. And you don't really think about it. The tobacco one you can kind of access, but there's other ones that are happening every day when you're bumping into people and talking to people that we're not able to even access on Zoom. So I love that. We've got so much more to share. Thank you for coming and spending some time with us today. A quick intro. Ann Betz is an author. She's a keynote speaker she's the type of keynote speaker where you just shut up and listen and you don't check your phone. That's who she is. She knows so much about neuroscience. And on the other end of the spectrum, she's a poet. So if you need a coach in your life or you want to learn more about coaching skills, she's my coach. She's who I go to when I'm trying to make sense of what's happening around me. She's awesome at that. If you Google Ann Betz, you'll find her. You can go to Amazon.com and check out her books. They're phenomenal. She's got so much great information today. And just being a generous, kind person. I've asked her to come on the porch now twice to explain kind of things that most of us are going, is something happening to me? Is something happening? And I'm like, Ann, the world needs you. Get your cape. Tell us what's happening to our brains. So that's why Ann's here today.
Well, and I'm usually Thank you, Lindsay. And it's always so
Yes.
fun hanging out with you. And it gives it gives me the purpose I think we're all longing for right now. And it gives me an excuse to actually go and say, okay, let me see if I can validate some of what I think might be going on. Let me see what else might be there. One of the things I found, we're talking about that we get cut off from a number of our senses when we're on Zoom. And we talked a little bit about smell. The other one we get cut off from is touch. And one of the things that I found that I was not aware of, and I put in the article, a fantastic article from Psychology Today about how much emotional information we are actually transmitting and receiving through touch. It's astonishing. More so, actually what they found is more so than what we're getting through the words or even visually. Yes. And if you think about, I was telling Lindsay, a good friend of mine just lost a dear friend through cancer, not COVID. And they went to a very truncated visitation, very limited, very few people. They were managing it as best they could. But, my immediate thought is like, how could you walk into something like that and not want to just, like almost feel like your arms were getting cut off? Because it's part of how we regulate. It's like the urge to hug. We can bring our nervous systems together, and together we may be able to find a little more regulation. And that I think is that's a really technical way of saying, it's a loving thing, but that's part of what we're looking for and part of what the impact is. And when we touch, one of the things that gets generated, more so in women than in men, but in both sexes, is oxytocin. Which makes us feel more connected. It's an anti-inflammatory hormone, so it can calm down some of the other things. It can boost your immune system. It's like really, really good for you. And we get that through, that's part of why just hugging can help us regulate. And it also gives us information, gives other people information about us. And I was thinking about, many of us have noticed that we touch our faces a lot. Has anybody else raise your hand? Did you touch your face? And they're always like, don't touch your face. And I'm like, well, cut off my hands then, because
it's so hard.
What it is it's self-comforting. A lot of it is self-comforting.
Like soothing, like a little baby,
just like you would with a baby. Something cries, something feels bad, whether it's your sweet dog or my little 7-month kitten, exactly. With a baby, you think about, we're just programmed, pick it up, give it that touch, give it that regulation kind of thing. And even animals will give us that oxytocin. So that's what we're looking for, both in terms of communicating and also getting a sense of where the person is. And again, some of it we're aware of, like you can hold a frightened animal or a frightened child or human, and they'll be shaking. Mm-hmm. You're aware, like, okay, this person is scared. But sometimes again, you're picking up whatever's going on with them in a way, it's so subtle, you're not even consciously processing it, but on some level, and you adjust your own communication and things like that accordingly. So that gets more cut off in this mode. The other thing I don't think I said this in the article, but it's a really important piece, is that it's a very visual thing. Right? We're looking at each other. We're right there. We're holding people in focus. We process, visual is a primary processing drive of our brain. Did that make sense? It's like, if I'm going to have a client, try to get in touch with how they feel, I will often say, close your eyes.
Yeah.
Or to dream about the future or anything like that, I'll have them close their eyes. And if they resist me because they think that's weird, I will say, let's reduce the distraction of the visual field.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that sounds good. Like, what do you mean?
That doesn't sound dorky. Yeah, now I'm in. Biologically speaking, I'm in then.
Yeah, that sounded really sexy, right? Yeah. But what you're trying to do is actually, when we're visually processing, consciously like visually processing, looking at things and taking them on, it is lighting up so much of your brain. It is taking so much of the energy of your brain. So that's why I like visualizing, going within, even checking in with emotions, with things that are not visual, can be more powerful if you close your eyes and let those neurons do something else. Or it's not like those would be the visual neurons, but if you calm them down, there's more energy available for the other neurons.
That makes perfect sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're such visual. What I hear you saying is that we're such visual beings. It's really a strength, but Zoom is like tap, 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 tap. And it's just, our nervous system is like trying to process all of that. The other thing that you said before everybody jumped in, but I want to make sure to say is this idea, can you talk about vision again, where you can go, how did you say it? How you focus, you come out in and out of focus in real life, you come in and out of focus?
I think part of the other problem with Zoom is that if you and I are just at a restaurant or or there's like a family gathering or something like that, what's going to happen is I think is that the two of the dominant networks of the brain, the task focus network and the default mode network, are going to be more in flux. Mm-hmm. And the default mode is where we think about ourselves, where we imagine the future, we think about the past. It's more of a soft focus network. Yep. Task focus is be present right here, right now, what's happening right in front of me. And I think that Zoom puts us a little more in task network.
Yes, I can see that. I mean, I feel it.
Yeah, I think that may be one of the major drains, is that we're in this task network. What's happening? What's going on in the chat? If you're leading a Zoom call, where are my slides? What's going on with everybody? And then we have to talk about, and then there's the whole thing about what's going on with me. Like, what's my hair doing? And why are you, why do I
usually when you're hanging out with your friends, you don't have like a mirror up the whole time where you can see yourself.
No, so let me bookmark that one.
Yeah.
But in normal day-to-day life, we're going to be flowing in and out of this default mode where we're going to think, well, how do I feel about that? Back to task and focus, back to default mode. But I think Zoom requires a little more. It's not that your mind is never wandering on Zoom. It's just probably tipped a little more toward this task network.
Yeah.
Both of them take energy in the brain. So it's not that default mode doesn't take energy, but they both burn calories, oxygen in the brain. But I think when we're in this task mode so intensely, it may be just requiring a little more energy. I'm not sure about that, but that's what it feels like to me. When I've had a day where I'm at my computer, I'm doing a lot of tasks, it can be super joyful and fun. But then I just feel like, oh my God, I just need to let my mind wander.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the type of attention that we're paying, and it's like I got tipped down on the teeter-totter, and now I need to balance it out with this just like, okay. And if you are back to back to back Zoom calls, you never get a chance to kind of recalibrate.
Yep. That makes perfect sense.
And that's part of why you need the balance of let your mind wander. And I think if you're if you're just, like if you think about hanging out with your friends, like happy hour, going to a bar or coffee shop or wherever you go, you're going to kind of go in and out a little more and not have to pay attention to everything.
Yeah. So that's so true. And even just like your actual eyeballs, I'm like, we're lurking the same distance all day. And when I was in college, my eyes would get so fatigued because I couldn't read and then look up, everything would be a blur. So I wonder too, if there's just that piece of, when you're at the coffee shop, you're looking here, you're looking at the barista, you're looking mid distance, you're looking background. And now we're just everything is a foot and a half away from me all the time.
Right. And it's a foot and a half away, but I actually we can't really make eye contact.
That's right.
And if I look at you, like, what's that?
It's so human.
It is. I mean, we want to make eye contact, and I am trying to make eye contact, but if I'm really going to sort of make eye contact, I need to look at the little camera
Yeah.
But when I'm not looking at anybody else, it's really, I actually think that is one that technology probably will solve.
Yes, I
They're
could
going
see
to
that.
figure that one out, like how we can have more real eye contact. That is solvable within
Yep.
technology. I don't think they can bring us smell-o-vision,
Quite yet.
touch-o-vision, you know.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this thing about looking at ourselves as well.
Okay, great.
Because you make me think, like, when you're, like you're having coffee with somebody, you're not looking at yourself. You make me think, who does? I think the only people who look at themselves all the time are like dancers.
Yeah.
And they're not probably looking at their faces, but they're spending, like, who spends the day in front of a freaking mirror?
Yeah, it's tiring. Well, this whole idea of self-monitoring that we have naturally as social beings, we self-monitor all the time. But we don't have this extra stimulus of like looking at our face the entire time on top of normal self-monitoring.
Right. So, assess and adjust. So
Mm-hmm.
we're, we may be listening to ourselves, like on the phone, or even even if you and I are in a conversation. This has happened to me, and this is why I love Lindsay. We're both like super high energy. And so, like I could, be in a conversation with you and start getting really loud.
Yeah.
And I might notice that I got a little loud, and maybe I'm too loud for wherever I am.
Yeah.
In a really nice restaurant or something. And then I'm going to monitor and adjust. But now I've got my visual image. And part of what I know about ourselves is, I think about the prime directive in terms of the brain, and the whole human system is survival. It's like Maslow's hierarchy, ultimately,
Yep.
right? We need to first of all survive. And so we need to know, like, who are we, where are we, who are we in relationship to other people? And so we've always got a lot of attention here.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've added this thing that we're not used to, which is looking at ourselves. We don't have the habit of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's extra information in addition to, we've always been able to luckily hear ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and, smell ourselves. I don't know why I'm going there, but there is that. And maybe look at, I can look at my hand and all of that, but I'm not, like, it's not part of human history that we would be looking at our own faces.
Yep. It's very
odd. I think it's pulling a lot of our attention. And my belief is that to pull away is like, it's a little bit like pulling up some strong Velcro for your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you kind of have to make yourself pull away. And then you're also monitoring this desire to judge yourself,
yes,
or fix something, or have an internal dialogue about whether that's a good color that you're wearing for Zoom, or,
totally.
How's your camera angle?
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly it. So that this whole piece about connecting and how different it is, we've talked about visually how it's different, smelling how it's different. Then you have you're almost over connecting to yourself because you're watching yourself all the time, and your brain is naturally, it's kind of like the cocktail party effect. If you hear your name in a busy crowd, you're naturally gonna
that's it. Yep.
pull it out. Well, it's the same with our face now. When you see your face in the lineup, it's natural that you're going to look at yourself. And it doesn't mean, and I think you said this in your article, Sam will post that article a couple times so people can see it. But this, I just lost my actual thought. Hold on. You said this in the article about the cocktail. Oh, it doesn't mean we're like narcissistic.
Yeah.
It's just like humans do this.
Right. I've heard people be like, oh my God, and all I can do is watch myself, and what's wrong with me that I keep looking at myself? And it's like, I really think your analogy to this cocktail party effect, which is very well studied.
Yeah.
And it's all about where we're putting attention, and that we have this capacity to pay attention to what's critical and drown out what's not. And it's very hard to drown out anything that is in reference to ourselves. But otherwise we can fuzz out a lot of things, because the brain's always trying to say what's relevant.
Yep.
And how do I stay safe? And so there's this weird thing with Zoom where all of our normal ways of sort of judging who we are in relationship to other people are a little more shut down. And so it's just, I think we're coming back to is, why does this make us tired? And somebody's saying it may help if you do presenter view and not the whole.
Yeah, not have your own picture up.
Yeah. Turning off the camera, less exhausted. We haven't been so focused on presenting that soft smile. I think that's great. Because you're not concerned with how you present yourself. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And Norma said this is so true. I don't know why people told me I have a resting bitch face. Because you're like, oh, that's what I look like when I'm listening. Well, I got to change that.
That could be a useful thing. There could be something just like, why do dancers watch themselves in the mirrors to see, or in yoga or anything, or in exercise, to see where you're off? I think that can be very helpful. And as a keynote speaker, Lindsay, it can be very helpful to have yourself videotaped, because you can see, are there habits of the way you put. I realized I was doing a lot of frowning because that's how I think, it's just frowning a lot, but it doesn't make me look very accessible. And so I've had to really, and I look back, I'm more relatable when I smile, and otherwise I'd look a little grim. So that's been helpful to kind of see that.
Sure.
You don't need to see it all the time.
What are some other positives? We were talking about this before, because it's easy, ironically, while we're on Zoom, to be like, this is why Zoom is the worst. But we've also talked about like a couple things that, whenever new technology comes out, we're always wary of it. And now we're talking about, it is good to be a little bit more self-aware. That could be helpful. What are some other positives? If you have some notes, if you have some thoughts about this, feel free to write it in the chat.
Yeah.
And do other ones come to mind for you? Other positives of this?
Of being on Zoom? Well, I think I think it can give you more information about how you are coming across. And I think that can be useful, because a lot of times in leadership, coaching, in teaching, we don't know. And we may be doing something that is having an unintentional impact that isn't what you want. And if you can watch yourself a little bit and manage that, that can be really useful. There's another one, and a lot of people have talked about it. You were there with your dog. This is my cat's butt up there. There's a humanizing that's available. I'm a big believer, and I know you are that as well, in this, we all could use some more humanizing. And so this being able to see each other from a distance and we can get more of the context of that person, and that automatically will trigger more empathy in most people. Some people are deficient in empathy, but for most of us. I was thinking about, we were doing a seminar, and my business partner was coaching someone, and she's just an excellent, excellent coach. And at one point she said to this young woman, she said, well, why don't you just go ahead and stand up? And she said, don't worry about it. And this woman's like, I'm in my pajamas. She really was. She was in the cutest little pink striped linen rumpled pajamas.
No one knew.
And it just, and she was so brave, and she just got up you couldn't kind of tell from here, but you could really tell when she stood up. But it was this, like, I think our hearts just melted with her courage and her humanity. And, the dog starts barking, or the kid comes by. I mean, those videos are the ones that get a ton of attention, because I think we like to see each other's humanness. Yeah, the dog.
I think that's so true. And that piece too with 93% of communication is nonverbal. So as tiring as it is, if you are having any type of conversation where you need relational glue, it's more helpful to have all of the cues there. Even more so in human person form, 4D form, but video still gives you way more data than an email.
Yeah, it's not giving you the in-person, but I was thinking about this in terms of, being a coach. I have traditionally, I was a coach before Zoom was invented. I've been a coach for 20 years. And I have always worked over the phone. And I can pick up a lot, because actually the visual field is shut down. My focus is very soft. I'm not focusing on anything, usually wandering around my house.
Yep.
I used to tell Lindsay, I have to say, when I was coaching her, her energy is so big, I would always just go outside. I would be like, what is this? I would find myself I was like, your energy is too big. I can't even be inside. But I can pick up a lot because I'm not distracted by the visual. Now, what I think the difference is like in a meeting, because that is harder to pick up what's going on with everybody.
Yeah.
Than it is if I'm just focused on one person and and there's like a big pause or there's a catch in your voice or something. I can hear that. But with, maybe 10 people in a meeting, but if we're all on the Brady Bunch view on the screen, I can see more how what I'm saying is landing or not.
Yep. That's very true.
I think that's good. Plus, it's harder to hide. And so, if I'm leading a meeting and somebody, sort of has a look on their face, I might say, hey, what's going on over there? What would you like to add?
Yep.
Whereas in a conference call, I might not know that they're a little disconnected.
Yep. They could be on mute making a milkshake. Who knows what they're doing?
Probably are.
So I'm curious, Ann, as we kind of move through, we've talked about like the stress, those first couple weeks, we're all in amygdala hijack. We're all just kind of freaked out. Now we're moving into this cadence of like, okay, I think I'm kind of getting the hang of this. And then, so many messages, like if we open up the country or if we open state by state, it's going to be slow. And so this idea that kept coming to mind is let's talk about resiliency. Let's talk about what practically too that we can do. But this is not, I wish in the beginning I was kind of wishful thinking, like, okay, we're going to do this for a month and then back to normal, and now I'm like, we are not going back anywhere. This will now be integrated into our lives. Zoom, it's not like we're all going to just stop doing video conferences. It's going to continue to integrate into our lives. So I'm curious, do you have any thoughts about even just emotional resiliency in this kind of every day feels the same? We are never going to return to where we were. Do you have any thoughts?
Sort of both in terms of how do we manage this sort of video world that we're in, as well as resilience in general. Lindsay, do you know the Stockdale Paradox?
I think we've talked about it, but
maybe did we talk about it last time or did somebody bring it up? It's this idea, and I believe it comes out of, now I'm not going to remember exactly, but it comes out of maybe the Korean War, Korean POWs. But basically, here's what it is, and here's what the research points to what resilience really takes, and the three major factors, and then we can see how they map to this whole video world. Mm-hmm. But the biggest one that is probably the most surprising, so the two that are less surprising are that people who, and they found this in Holocaust survivors as well, that what protects us is making meaning out of our situation. Finding a way to make meaning. And I was saying early on, like, I love hanging out with you. It gives me something meaningful in my day. Mm-hmm. It gives me some way that I feel like my life matters. And that is a gift to me, thank God. Yep. So also personal connection is part of resilience. Having a, some kind of social network builds resilience, having meaning. And the one that can be a little surprising is facing the truth. So the Stockdale Paradox about survivors in a POW camp was that the ones that kept saying, oh, I know we're going to be out by Easter, didn't have as high a survival rate as the ones who said, I don't know when this is going to end and I'm going to make the best of it while I'm in it. And I think
that's in Viktor Frankl's book too.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they may have found that in concentration camps as well. But you can see that now. You can see the people saying, I was on a call with some of my good friends last night, and one of them was saying, like, this just has to end. This just has to end. When is, like, we need to, like, we can't keep doing this, which I get that. I have certainly been there for days at a time. But what I have found sort of better for my mental health is to say, I don't know. I don't know when it's going to end. Yep. I don't want to put all of my hope and like that's what's going to be okay into that basket, because we know, like California they just got extended, I think, to June 1st. And this is, if you're watching this on repeat, this is April 30th. So it's another month. And so if you had your heart set on this was going to be over by May 15th, well, you just got really disappointed again.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a little harder for your system to take. And I'm not talking about having like a depressing, negative, Eeyore view of things, but it's for resilience. It's this, a friend of mine used to call it, what are the ruthless rules of reality? What's the reality right now? And they find that businesses and individuals who can say, basically, this is what it is, much more resilient.
That makes perfect sense. That's one thing that we changed in our house, was that we were in a similar way saying like, well, this won't be too much longer. We're coming close. The governor tomorrow in Indiana is going to tell us what's going on. And then we just decided last week, we had this moment, we were on a walk with the dogs and we thought, what if we just start planning as if this is all that 2020 is? We just did this thought experiment. Like, what if this is what it is? And we don't keep like waiting for the day where everything opens. And we actually made different decisions. I would say higher self-care decisions, because it was like, okay, if this is 2020, we're not going to keep daydreaming that I'm going to go back and speak on a stage in front of thousands of people anytime soon. What do we need to do? We need to make a studio. We need a second office. Everything needs to be more ergonomic. We need the workout stuff that we're used to from our trainer. We need this. And we just made those decisions so that regardless, hey, maybe we will be out. Maybe we will start shifting tomorrow. Maybe the governor will start opening up Indiana. But if he doesn't, we've actually made better long-term decisions for us. And we're taking better care of ourselves when we're almost in a victim mindset. When we're like, when are you going to let me free? When are you going to let me free? We actually give over more power.
That's good. I think that's good. You make me think, and then there's some really good questions in the chat and some really good comments, and people are saying, Victoria's saying, I've been doing it. It's reducing the anxiety. And you make me, as you were talking about it, I thought, isn't this what like the Buddhists have been telling us, and like Eckhart Tolle and like the mindfulness people are like, be here, and Ram Dass, be here now and make decisions from now. And I think about in my company, Lindsay, that was one of the things that we did early on is we said, we didn't even have an end date in mind, but we basically said, given what's happening right now, what makes sense? Rather than we had in-person trainings planned all through the summer. And back in February, we thought we were going to do them. Well, they've all been canceled at this point, but we also had made some other plans that have really stood us in good stead. So thank God.
Yes.
And so my anxiety is down because I wasn't planning that was going to be my income stream. Thank goodness. So somebody had
there's a bunch of,
and I didn't, but Allie, I wanted to catch Allie's. If we need a trainer hold a longer meeting that was supposed to be in person, how do you organize this? And I do have a couple of thoughts, Allie. And Deborah also said doing polls. I think, so I've been doing a lot of online training. And one of the things I had to cancel was a 4-day, 8-hour-a-day training in London that was supposed to happen in early March. And obviously couldn't go to London and all of that. So I learned a lot by doing that. One of the things is depending on your group, depending on the size, depending on how interactive the training is, one of the things I learned is classic training is a break every 90 minutes. For Zoom, it seems to be more like 75 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a little rule of thumb. Break a little bit earlier and a little more often. We did 5 hours one day and then 4 hours the other day. And what I note, I'm sort of like trying to figure out how is this working. This was very interactive with a small group, lots of conversation in some breakout rooms. I still noticed that about 3 hours, it kind of felt like we were all just sort of done. And we all kind of like, sucked it up and got a little second gear, like put on our big girl underwear and like big boy, and like did a little more. But to me, if I think about longer trainings, the way that if I had to do a day-long training again or 5 hours, I would probably do like 2.5 and then take a much longer break.
Yep.
tell everybody go outside, meditate,
Ooh.
something. And then if you had to do and I would not do 8 hours, I would limit it to 5. That is
Yep.
a lot for people to be paying this amount of attention. And what's going to happen is whatever was supposed to be gotten into, they're not going to learn it.
It's
So,
kind of, yep.
yeah.
Just a
And
lot.
when we did, the other thing, Ellie, I would say is that when we did breakout rooms and gave people a chance to just talk one-on-one, that already they would come back and they'd be just, it was like they'd gotten a boost of energy, because I think they only had to process one person rather than, and they could talk more.
Yeah.
So I think, giving people, and it was remarkably easy. I was thinking, I can't do breakout rooms, I don't have time. And actually it doesn't take any time. And you just put everybody in a breakout room, you say, what do you think about this? Pull them, even if it's just 6 minutes.
Yep.
It's amazing. So
I think that's so smart.
yeah.
What about this? What about this question from Caitlin? What do we do? I've seen this sort of false positivity or waiting for what's next, and it doesn't feel genuine. Any tips on how to respond to people who are in kind of false positivity mode?
Kind of the spiritual bypass.
Yeah, that we talk about. Yeah, this idea of like.
Yeah, for me, that sort of goes into the false positivity. What ends up happening with that is that whatever they're really feeling is being suppressed. And that's often why it feels really off to be with them.
Yeah.
Because, it's not really there. What do I do if I feel like it depends on my relationship with them and how straight I can be. And as a coach, if it's a client, I've got lots of tools to kind of get around to how they're really feeling and get them to voice that.
Yeah.
But that's in a professional relationship. I have sort of 2 answers. If it's a really good friend and we have a pretty honest relationship, I would probably call them out on it.
Yeah.
I'd probably say something. If it's somebody that's a little more peripheral, I would probably avoid them.
Yeah. Well, because some people don't want to tap into how they're really feeling right now. It could be because it reminds them of something in their past, or that's not something that they've had to do personal work around. And so it can be really draining when somebody's not aligned inside. It can be really draining to kind of play the game with them. So that makes sense that we've changed, like having to change your social circles, or who do I invest in right now that can be here now with me?
Right. I think
where the magic is.
It can be true on either end of the spectrum. There's a couple people in my life, actually in my family, who have a very dark view of life in general, and always want to take the conversation to this, like, I call it, life is terrible and we're all going to die, which is, true that we're all going to die at some point. But, I'm finding in this time, I don't have the filtering energy to filter that. And so I've actually stopped talking to a couple of people. Not like I'm not talking to you, but I've just kind of moved things more to like a little check-in on email and a check-in on chat, like that, because I am finding I need all my energy for my clients and myself.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't have the extra to go down this tunnel of how awful this all is. I get that. I'm not avoiding it. So there's that end of the spectrum as well, as like the polypositive sort of thing. And it's weird, because I also really appreciate people who can say, I just saw that the Arctic ozone layer seems to have healed itself. That's pretty cool. Like there are some genuine positives.
Totally. Yeah. Yep. So finding that balance, or people that can live in both.
Yeah.
In the tension of reality. That's the tension of reality, that not everything's perfect and we are going to die someday, which is really intense to think about. But this idea of like, and all we ever had was this moment anyway. So let's live here and now.
Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about what are the Zoom things that drain me? What are the things that enliven me? Some of it is the platform and some of it is the conversation.
That's right. That makes sense to me.
I talk in my article, I've got this group of 4 women plus me. And we very early on, we'd agreed to meet weekly. And we also it wasn't a super formal way, but we kind of just made this request, like, let's not spend all of our time talking about how awful it is. So we have this beautiful rhythm where we kind of check in, how's everybody doing? There's actually room if you're doing great, you can celebrate that. There's room if you're not doing great. And we don't just talk about COVID the whole time. And that's an intentional, I would call it, design. And so I really look forward to that group because I feel like the conversation is real and supportive. So I think there's also that. I gave the other example. I think one of my rules now, and I've had some experiences, if it's a social gathering, do not have it be too big. It's stupid and pointless. It's just like, so in my article, I talk about doing Easter with the whole family. There's like 20 people on there. And we're, that in my family, we would never have all 20 people have a conversation. It's just not human. Yeah. Right? We peel off, and I go talk to my nieces because I find them delightful and I want to talk with them about fashion and get their advice. And there's like the 3 or 4 of us in the corner talking, you know, and then all the freaking computer geeks who think they know everything about everything, they just go talk to each other. I don't have to be part of that. But here we are on Zoom, like all taking turns, and it was excruciating and I hated it.
Yeah, I can totally see that. What are some other tips? You shared a couple of them in your article, things that we could do, behaviors we could adopt that are different, that can help us mitigate this way of communicating.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's any other really great earth-shaking ones. I do think if it's social, keep it manageable, 5 people where everybody does get a chance to talk and be seen and heard. I think maybe having it's a little agreement about, hey guys, let's share something cool. Let's also share something real, where you have a little bit of that. I think that this is back to your, like, what if this just is the way it is? And I think that's so brilliant that you guys talked about, how do we set up our life? One of the things I think in the urgency of all of this is some people overbooked themselves. Some people are underbooked, some people are overbooked. So I think it is saying, how much time on video actually works for me during a day?
Just asking yourself.
Totally. And noticing, like, oh, I had 2 one-hour meetings today and I feel fine. And I had, 5 hours and I feel like shit. Okay, now and just know this might be more longer term. So set your boundaries around that, structure your day around that, say no. If you've already got 2 Zoom meetings that day, say no to the 3rd one. There will be another time. And you need to not burn yourself out and exhaust yourself, because, man, if you do get exposed to this virus, your immune system's going to be less able to deal with it. So I think, like, learning your capacity and then having those boundaries would be one of my biggest advices to myself.
Yes. I'm with you. We were talking to our team, doing check-ins with our team this last week, and we were like crispy critters the first 2 weeks, just adjusting. Then we kind of found our sea legs and we were moving. And now we're at week like 6, and all of us are kind of getting, Thursday feels like Friday. We're feeling more fatigued. And so even saying like, okay, this is what we're going to do next week in light of how we all feel this week. How are we going to pivot? What about, I'm just going to ask some of the questions that are here in the chat too, because I want to be mindful.
I want to answer Trisha's question about ambiguity.
Yeah, please do.
And then I want to hear what else you're seeing, but that one really intrigued me.
Yes, me too.
It's one of the most exhausting things about this time is unpredictability and ambiguity. And our brains are primed. Our prediction machines, it's how we run, is on prediction. We're constantly a couple of beats ahead. It's back to how we survive. We need to know what's coming, like that. So one of the things that I focus on, and Lindsay, this might even be, we could even do another call if you want to, but one of the things that I love is that here's the power of human beings. You cannot control the external circumstances a lot of the time. And whether you agree with some of the rules that are happening right now and when we should open right now, there are in most states certain rules that are in violation of the law or a government order if you don't abide by. So you can't control that. And you can't control when this is going to actually be over. But here's what you can do. You can look here and you can say, okay, I can't predict anything out there. What can I predict about me? So you can say, well, I can predict, or I would like to. So here's the process that I use. I say, well, okay, I don't like any of this. What would I like to, so and I can't control of it, what would I like to be able to predict about me? So you can say, well, I would like to be able to predict that I can get through this, right? That I'm resilient, that I'm creative. Me, it all is like right here. It's not, I would like to predict that the government opens tomorrow or the state opens tomorrow. No, I would like to predict that I'm capable and able no matter what happens. Okay, so then the question that I ask is, well, what evidence do you have for that? Not like a judgment, like a real curiosity. When, and another way of asking is, well, when have you been resilient and predictable and resilient and creative?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might say, well, you know, that, or what hard thing have you gotten through before? What thing that felt really impossible did you get through?
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is really critical for the brain is that you take this desired way of being or desired future about yourself and you link it to something real. Because if you say, you know, so for me, I said, wow, I got through a really bad relationship last year and I really didn't know how I was gonna, you know, move out and restructure my life. It was really, really hard. And there were lots of reasons it was hard. He was a really bad guy. And I got through that. Well, you know what? That tells me something about me.
Mm-hmm.
It tells me, and so that's what I have been telling myself. I cannot predict what's going to happen, but what I can say is, do you know what? You've gotten through some shit before.
Yep.
Probably do it again.
I think
You
that's
like
so
that one?
Well, we would talk about that in coaching school too, helping our clients borrow their own courage. You have courage. Go borrow it from yourself.
I love that. What a great phrase.
You know, how do I borrow my own courage? When have I been through this before? Or when have I been through a time of the unknown? I think about, like, you know, when my dad was in January, he was in Indianapolis with us and he had what looked like a stroke when he was visiting. And you know, I thought about, like, well, how did I handle that? I just said, hey, all I have is this moment with him. We're going to move through this moment. Then the ambulance is going to come and they're going to take care of him. And then we're going to move through the next moment. And having to borrow that, that also reminded me, Ann, of this, when I was going through a divorce. This was like 6 years ago now. But I remember one day I was driving in my car and I thought, no, and I was going through a divorce in the Christian world. So there was layers of shame. It wasn't just
so hard.
It was very hard. And I'm driving and I thought, nobody's actually saying mean things to me right now. Nobody's hurting me. Nothing is actually happening to me. And I said out loud, I'm driving my car. All we're doing right now is I'm driving my car. So I'm creating suffering in my imagination because I'm going, well, what if this person thinks this? What if this person thinks this? What's going to happen to me? And will I ever get married again? What? And I'm in all this stress, anxiety, suffering. I was making up in my head. All I was really doing was driving my car in Westfield, Indiana. And so this idea of I can either borrow my own courage from past, or I can create more suffering for myself. You know, we have a little bit more probably mental control than we did a couple weeks ago, maybe. And so now we can start to, like, how do I control my thoughts a little bit more, or choose to borrow courage or borrow suffering? I think that helps us all kind of, and we all have different circumstances. So it's like, well, sure, it's easy for me to say I'm, you know, privileged and I'm not, you know, I don't have to go work in the front lines every day. And we all, to not compare, to not put ourselves in a position or try to create a hierarchy of all the people around us of who has it worse than the next, and just look at our own lives. Like you said in the beginning, you did this, like looking in, not look out, look in and see where you can borrow.
Yeah. Not look out at what I can't control, or maybe, you know, if I, you know, I'm so desperate to get out that I do some things that put other people at risk. That's not the kind of legacy I want to have. I don't want to put myself at risk, you know. So, you know, what can't, where, what can I do? And it's a beautiful thing about human beings is how amazingly resilient we are.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm noticing there's so many good comments in the chat. Sorry, everybody, but, Barbie is saying, people, the leader is saying, schedule all of these. And I don't know, it depends on if that person will listen or not. There's a twofold thing here that I want to say. So we've talked about this. So the exhaustion is coming from stress. This level of attention that Zoom is requiring when we're so much on Zoom, it can actually be sort of, if you're just sitting at home and you got nothing going on all week, and Wednesday nights you got, have a little wine with your girlfriends on Zoom, it's probably not exhausting you. We're sort of talking about, so there's too much, but it can be stimulating. That could be really fun. This Barbie's talking about, back-to-back Zoom meetings. So it's creating stress. It's creating a drain. It's exhausting people. That leader might think, well, so what? They're working. Well, here's the so what. Stress impacts our ability to be creative, to think outside the box, to have empathy, to make plans. All of that is not just people are tired, it's that people become less able, they become less effective. So that's the connection there, why we care.
Yes.
So all the back-to-back Zoom meetings, you're probably getting less productivity than if they just gave it a break. And if that is something that this person could understand, if they're willing to listen, that could be very useful.
Yep. We talk about that when we coach teams, whenever we do a check-in, 1 to 10, how stressed are you? If somebody's at a 7, 8, 9, the goal is to lower their stress, not like, well, let's cheerlead them to do more. Like that's, we're beyond functional levels of stress. We've gone beyond it. So that's
if you're at a 1 on stress and you're just real bored and nothing's very fun, have a few Zoom meetings, There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I think we were talking about when it goes too far. So it can be the thing that perks you up too. So that's an advantage.
Yeah.
This was a blast.
Thank you so much, Ann. Thank you, friends, for joining us. You can find Ann. What's the best website or place for them to find you, Ann?
I got a number of things out there, but my website is beaboveleadership.com. And we also have a YouTube channel with lots of stuff about coaching and some other stuff about stress. And that is Be Above, and it's BE, like be above. Be Above Leadership on YouTube. So that's a good place to find me as well. So thank you.
Yeah, we will send out a recording of this. If you have people that you think would enjoy it, we'll send that to you. We'll make sure Ann's contact information is in that follow-up email too. As many people as you can have in your life that want to help you understand your nervous system, help you understand stress. I think that's a win for all of us as we kind of build new life teams in this new era of time that we're all in. So Ann, I just so deeply appreciate you. You've been such a pivotal human in my life and on my team. So thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you real soon on the porch.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks everybody. Thanks Lindsay. Bye everybody.
Bye.